I never thought a joke could ruin my marriage. It was just harmless teasing. Something I said without thinking. But here I am now. Sitting in my car, staring at the divorce papers in my hands. Wondering how the hell it all came to this. My name is Ashley, and I'm 32 years old. This is the story of how I lost everything. Ryan and I met when we were young. Full of dreams and ideas of what life would be like together. We got married at 24. Had Sophia 2 years later. And then Liam came along a few years after that. Our family was everything I ever wanted. Or at least, that's what I told myself. I was a stay-at-home mom. And Ryan worked long hours as an engineer, making sure we had a good life. At first, it felt like we were building something beautiful, a future, a home, a life full of love. But somewhere along the way, things changed. I just didn't realize it at the time. Life with kids is exhausting. Anyone who says otherwise is lying. The early mornings, the sleepless nights, the constant cleaning, cooking, planning, it's non-stop. And while I loved my children more than anything, there was a part of me that started feeling invisible. Every day was the same routine. Wake up, take care of the kids, clean the house, make dinner, go to bed, and repeat. Ryan, on the other hand, got to leave for work, interact with other adults, have a life outside of being a dad. And even though I knew he worked hard, a part of me resented him for it. I didn't realize it back then. But that resentment was slowly poisoning our marriage. I started noticing the distance between us. But I didn't know how to fix it. At first, I tried to talk about it. But every conversation felt one-sided. Ryan would come home exhausted, barely able to keep up with my words as I unloaded my frustrations from the day. I'd tell him how Liam threw a tantrum in the grocery store. How Sophia was struggling with her math homework. How the laundry was piling up. How I was tired, so damn tired. And he'd nod, mutter something like, "I'm sorry, babe, that sounds rough," before zoning out. I needed more than that. I needed to feel seen, heard, appreciated, but instead, I felt like a glorified nanny. Like I was just here to keep the house running while he got to have a career and a life outside of it. That's when the jokes started. It was easier to joke than to admit how lonely I felt. I'd make little comments, teasing him about how he barely noticed me anymore, about how he was married to his job instead of me. But the one that changed everything happened on a Friday night, one of the rare nights when the kids were at my mom's. And we actually had time alone together. Ryan had made dinner, trying to do something nice. And we sat at the table with a glass of wine. I don't even remember what led up to it. But at some point, I laughed and said, "You know, you were actually my second choice." I expected him to laugh. I expected him to roll his eyes or play along. Instead, his face fell, the light in his eyes dimmed. And for the first time in a long time, I saw something there, something I didn't expect. Hurt. I brushed it off, taking another sip of wine, acting like it was no big deal. But it was. That moment was the beginning of something I couldn't see yet. It was the first crack in the foundation. The start of a shift in our marriage that I wouldn't understand until it was too late. If I had known then what I know now, maybe I would have chosen my words more carefully. Maybe I would have realized that even a joke can leave a scar. But I didn't. And now, I'm sitting here, holding divorce papers, wondering how I let everything slip away. At first, I thought nothing had changed. The night after I made that joke, Ryan still kissed me on the forehead before bed. The next morning, he still got up early, made his coffee, and headed to work like he always did. From the outside, everything seemed normal, but deep down, something was different. It started with the little things. The way he didn't linger in the kitchen before leaving for work. The way he barely responded when I texted him during the day. The way he sat on the couch at night, staring at his phone instead of talking to me. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was reading too much into things. But the feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. Then came the late nights. Ryan had always worked hard. But suddenly, he was staying at the office more than ever. It started with 1 or 2 nights a week. Then 3. Then almost every night. I'd ask him why he was working so much. And he'd sigh and say something about deadlines. About needing to impress his boss. About how he was doing this for us. For us. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to be the supportive wife. The one who didn't nag. Who didn't demand too much. But the more distant he became, the more alone I felt. I started keeping track of the hours. 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m. The kids would ask when Daddy was coming home. And I'd lie, soon, baby. But I had no idea if that was true. One night, I was cleaning up after dinner when his phone buzzed on the counter. He had left it there when he went to shower. Something he never did anymore. He always had it on him. Always face down. I glanced at the screen. My heart suddenly pounding for reasons I didn't understand. A message from Madison. I hesitated. Madison. The name felt unfamiliar. Out of place. My hands trembled as I picked up the phone. Staring at the preview of the message. Tonight was fun, smile, can't wait for next time. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My vision blurred. My ears rang. My mind raced with explanations. But none of them made sense. I put the phone down just as I heard the shower turn off. My hands were shaking as I finished wiping the counter. Trying to act normal. Trying to breathe. Ryan walked in a few minutes later. Running a towel through his damp hair. Hey, babe. He said it casually. Like nothing was wrong. Like everything was perfectly fine. I stared at him. Trying to find something. Guilt. Nervousness. Anything. But he just moved around the kitchen like he always did. I wanted to ask. I wanted to demand an answer. But instead, I just said, "You've been working late a lot." He glanced at me, then shrugged. Yeah, you know how it is. I didn't know how it was. Instead of pushing further, I laughed, trying to keep my voice light. You sure you're not sneaking off with a secret girlfriend? I said it as a joke. But I was watching him closely. Too closely. Ryan froze for half a second, just a flicker. Just long enough for me to see it. And then he laughed. Yeah, babe, that's exactly what I'm doing. He said, shaking his head. You caught me. But it didn't feel like a joke anymore. That night, as I lay in bed beside him, staring at the ceiling while he scrolled through his phone, I realized something terrifying. The man I married, the one I built a life with, was slipping away. And I had no idea how to stop it. I wish I could say that night was the moment I knew for sure. That I sat up in bed, confronted Ryan, and got the truth out of him. But that's not what happened. Instead, I let it fester. I told myself I was overreacting. That Madison was just a friend or a coworker. And that I was being paranoid. But deep down, I knew. I felt it in the way he avoided my eyes. In the way he kept his phone glued to his hand. In the way he seemed more present at work than he was at home. Still, I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be the jealous wife. The controlling wife. The insecure wife. So instead, I did something worse. I started pushing him away. I stopped trying to talk to him about my day because he didn't seem to care anymore. I stopped asking him to spend time with the kids because he always had an excuse. I even stopped waiting up for him at night because I knew he wouldn't be coming home until late. And when he did, we barely spoke. The only time I could get any reaction out of him was when I made jokes. Little comments, laced with sarcasm and bitterness. Working late again? Should I book you a hotel room so you don't have to bother coming home? Tell Madison I said hi. He never laughed. I should have stopped. I should have told him how I really felt. But I was angry, and hurt, and I wanted him to feel it, too. The night everything changed started like any other. I had just put Sophia and Liam to bed. Exhausted from another long day of doing everything alone. The house was quiet except for the hum of the dishwasher and the ticking of the clock. Ryan still wasn't home. I told myself I didn't care. That I was used to it. But when I walked past the living room window and saw headlights pulling into the driveway, my stomach twisted. I don't know what made me do it. But I turned off the living room lights and stepped back into the shadows. I watched as Ryan sat in his car for a few minutes. His head down, staring at his phone. He was texting someone, I knew that much. And then, just as he went to put his phone down, I saw it. A smile. Not just any smile. The kind he used to give me. The kind that made me fall in love with him all those years ago. Except now, it wasn't for me. I stepped forward, flicking the lights back on just as he walked through the front door. He froze when he saw me. "You're still up?" he asked, setting his keys down like nothing was wrong. I crossed my arms. "Who were you texting?" His jaw tightened. "No one." I let out a bitter laugh. "Right. Because you always smile like that when you text, no one." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Ashley, I'm tired. Can we not do this tonight?" "Oh, I'm sorry. Am I making you uncomfortable?" I snapped. Must be exhausting sneaking around behind my back. For a moment, he just stood there, staring at me, and then he did something I wasn't expecting. He didn't deny it. He didn't get angry. He just looked sad. And somehow, that was worse. "I don't know what you want me to say," he murmured. I felt my chest tighten. "Say it's not true," I whispered. "Tell me I'm wrong." But he didn't. And in that silence, I knew. Everything we had built, everything we had been, it was gone. And there was no coming back from this. I stood there, my arms crossed tightly over my chest, waiting for him to say something, anything. But Ryan just looked at me. His lips slightly parted like he wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. And maybe that was the answer. "You're not even going to deny it?" My voice was barely above a whisper. But the anger beneath it burned like wildfire. Ryan let out a slow breath, running a hand through his hair. "Ashley, it's not what you think." I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. "Oh, that's a good one. Classic. So tell me, Ryan, what exactly am I supposed to think?" He glanced away, avoiding my eyes. "Madison is just a friend." I felt my stomach twist at her name. The way he said it. Soft. Familiar. Like she wasn't some stranger. But someone who had already found a place in his life. "A friend?" I scoffed. "Right. That's why you smile when you text her. That's why you've been staying late at work. Keeping your phone glued to your hand. Treating me like I don't even exist." Ryan clenched his jaw. "This isn't fair. You act like..." "Like what?" I cut him off, stepping closer. "Like I'm crazy? Like I'm imagining things? You've been pulling away from me for months, Ryan, and now I know why." For a moment, he said nothing, and then, quietly, he admitted, "I don't know if we can fix this." His words knocked the breath out of me. I had expected denial, excuses, maybe even an argument, but I wasn't ready for this, for him to just give up. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing myself to stay upright when all I wanted to do was collapse. "So that's it?" My voice trembled. "You're just done?" Ryan exhaled, his shoulders slumping. "Ashley, we haven't been happy for a long time. You know that." I felt the weight of his words press down on me, crushing whatever small hope I had left. "And what?" I bit out. "Instead of trying to fix things, you run to someone else?" Ryan looked away, guilt flashing across his face. But he didn't argue, because he knew I was right. And that was the moment I realized, it didn't matter what I said. It didn't matter how angry or hurt I was. He had already made his choice. A sharp, bitter laugh escaped my lips. "You know, I spent months blaming myself, thinking maybe if I had been a better wife, if I hadn't been so tired all the time, if I had just..." I shook my head, my voice breaking. "But now I see it. You weren't looking for a way to fix us, Ryan. You were looking for a way out." His silence was all the confirmation I needed. I felt the tears prick at my eyes. But I refused to let them fall. Not in front of him. Not when he wasn't worth it. "I want you to leave," I said finally, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Ryan hesitated, his eyes searching mine. "Ashley, no." I shook my head. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to break me and then pretend like you care." For a moment, I thought he might fight for us, that he might say something. Anything, to prove that this marriage still meant something to him. But instead, he just nodded. And then, just like that, he turned and walked out the door. I stood in the middle of our quiet house, the sound of his footsteps fading into the night. And for the first time since this all began, I realized, this wasn't just the end of our marriage. This was the beginning of something else. Something I'd have to face alone. The house felt empty without him. I had always thought that if Ryan ever left, it would be loud, full of screaming and slamming doors, of final words that cut too deep to ever heal. But it wasn't like that at all. It was quiet. Too quiet. His closet was half empty now. His shoes were gone from the front door. The coffee cup he always used no longer sat in the sink in the mornings. And yet, somehow, his presence still lingered. It was in the way Sophia sat at the dinner table, poking at her food, her little brows furrowed in confusion. It was in the way Liam asked, over and over, "When's Daddy coming home?" as if saying it enough times would make it true. I didn't know how to answer them. Because the truth was, Ryan wasn't coming home. The first few weeks were a blur. I went through the motions. Getting the kids ready for school. Making meals. Pretending I was fine. I signed the divorce papers. I met with the lawyer. I did all the things I was supposed to do. But at night, when the house was quiet, when I was finally alone with my thoughts, the weight of it all came crashing down. I had lost him. No, that wasn't right. I had lost us. The family we had built. The life we had planned. The dreams we had whispered to each other in the dark before the kids were born. It was all gone. And no matter how much I wanted to rewind time, to go back to the nights when he still looked at me like I was his whole world, I couldn't. One night, I found myself sitting on the bedroom floor, surrounded by old photos. Our wedding day, the first ultrasound of Sophia, Liam's first birthday party, memories of a life that no longer existed. I stared at them, waiting for the sadness to hit, for the grief to wrap itself around me and squeeze until I couldn't breathe. But it didn't, because underneath all the heartbreak, all the anger and regret, there was something else. Relief. It startled me at first. How could I feel relieved after everything that had happened? After all the pain? After all the nights spent crying into my pillow? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, I had been losing Ryan long before Madison ever came into the picture. We had been breaking for years, chipping away at each other with every unspoken word, every ignored frustration. I had been holding on so tightly, so afraid of what life would look like without him, that I hadn't even noticed how unhappy we both were. And now, for the first time in a long time, I could finally breathe. The next morning, I woke up before the kids, made a cup of coffee, and sat outside on the porch, watching the sunrise. For the first time in months, my hands weren't shaking. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for Ryan to walk through the door and make things better. Because I finally understood, he wasn't the one who was going to fix me. I was. So I took a deep breath, wiped away the last of my tears, and made a promise to myself. I would pick up the pieces. For me, for Sophia, for Liam, and no matter how hard it got, no matter how many nights I still found myself reaching for someone who wasn't there, I would keep moving forward. Because this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. Time didn't stop after Ryan left. Even though, for a while, it felt like it should have. The world kept turning, the sun kept rising, and the days blurred together in a strange mix of routine and survival. I took Sophia to school every morning, helped Liam put his shoes on, packed lunches, made dinner, folded laundry, and yet, no matter how much I tried to keep moving, there was still this hollow feeling inside me, like I was living in a house full of echoes. Full of ghosts of a life that didn't exist anymore. Ryan had moved on quickly. Too quickly. I saw it in the way his texts became less about the kids and more about schedules. I'll pick them up at 5. I'll drop them off Sunday night. No, how are you? No, are you okay? Just business. And then, one day, Sophia came home and said something that knocked the breath out of me. Daddy has a new friend. I froze, my hand tightening around the dish I was drying. What do you mean, baby? I asked, keeping my voice as calm as possible. She shrugged, swinging her little legs under the kitchen chair. Her name's Madison. She's nice. Madison. The name felt like a knife. Not because I was still in love with Ryan, no. That part of me had already started to fade, but because of what it meant. It meant he had already replaced me. It meant I had spent months grieving something he had already let go of. I forced a smile for Sophia's sake, nodding like it was no big deal. That's nice, honey. But that night, when the kids were asleep, I let myself break. I cried for the woman I used to be. The one who believed love was forever. I cried for the marriage I had fought so hard to keep. Only to realize I had been the only one fighting. And I cried for the kids. For the life they had lost. For the way their world had split in two. But the thing about breaking is, once you've done it, once you've let yourself shatter completely, you have no choice but to start putting yourself back together. So that's what I did. I stopped checking Ryan's social media. Stopped wondering if Madison was younger than me, prettier than me, better than me, because it didn't matter anymore. He had his life, and I had mine. And mine wasn't over just because my marriage was. I started doing things for myself again. Little things. At first, buying fresh flowers for the kitchen. Taking long walks in the morning before the kids woke up. Reading a book at night instead of scrolling through old photos. Torturing myself with memories. And slowly, day by day, I started feeling like myself again. Not the Ashley who was Ryan's wife. Not the Ashley who had lost everything. Just Ashley. One afternoon, a few months later, I took Liam to the park while Sophia was at a birthday party. He ran ahead of me, laughing as he climbed the jungle gym, his little feet kicking in the air as he went down the slide. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel weighed down by sadness. I felt light, alive, maybe even happy. It wasn't the life I had planned. It wasn't the life I had dreamed of. But it was mine. And that was enough. And that's my story. Life doesn't always go the way we planned. But we keep moving forward. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps. And if you want to hear more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So drop a comment below. Have you ever experienced something similar? Let's talk about it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.